Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's important conversation. This is the first of two conversations that we'll have to touch the topic areas for across all four of our networks. My name is Olivia Harp, and I'm the program manager for network building here at Prosperity Now. And we want to officially welcome you to From Taxes to Baby Bonds: Navigating Presidential Administration Changes. And so a lot of you are familiar with me, and you're probably familiar with these housekeeping tips, but I do want to go over them just to ensure that everyone's comfortable on the platform. So this webinar is being recorded and it will be mailed out to you within a week from today. Even those who weren't able to attend in person will receive the recording as well. And you are muted to ensure sound quality because we are recording this and broadcasting this out. But we definitely want to welcome you to use the questions box as much as you want to not only ask questions of our speakers and experts from today, but also to share thoughts, reflections, comments, suggestions. We really want this to be a very relaxed conversation as we all are just coming together to share out and navigate the anticipated shifts that we see coming down the pipeline. And if you experience any technical issues, please email gotomeeting@prosperitynow.org. And so we want you to get the most out of today's call. So we want to ensure that you join from a quiet space so you can just sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation, and take all of this great information in from these wonderful experts that we have on today's call. Feel free to grab some coffee or a snack to settle in. I know it's about time for me to grab that second cup of coffee. Again, engage us in the questions box. You, share your questions and comments and reflect on ways to apply what you learned today to your own work. And so without further ado, I'm going to go over the agenda really quickly, and then I'll pass things off to my colleague, Keyshawn Harris. So we just did some welcome. We're going to do some introductions. Then we have a really great presentation by our wonderful friend Estuardo, followed by a panel discussion with some very heavy hitters. And then we'll move into final questions and reflections because we definitely want to hear from you. And we also have some goodies as it relates to what's on the horizon and upcoming learning opportunities. But with that being said, Keyshawn, please take it away.
Hey everybody, I'm Keyshawn Harris, Associate Director of Community Impact here at Prosperity Now. First, I want to say thank you all for your patience as we work through some technical difficulties this morning or this afternoon. And we also want to thank our members of our Tax Opportunity Network and our Campaign for Every Kid's Future networks for your collaboration with putting on this learning opportunity. With the recent shift in the political landscape, Prosperity Now recognizes the importance of bringing together partners in this work for us to have an open dialogue about how to best chart our paths forward. We know that this new leadership presents opportunities for policies and programs involving taxes and asset building to evolve. Today, our conversation aims to delve into anticipated shifts in key areas such as the child tax credit, baby bonds, children's savings account, and more. Whether you're a community leader, asset advocate, practitioner, or VitaSite coordinator, we welcome you to join into our conversation this afternoon as we work collectively to shift paradigms. As a reminder, Prosperity Now is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to transform narratives and systems to ensure our economy works for everyone. And we are willing to work with any elected official, any community group and organization to make that mission a reality. Today, we are delighted to be joined by a wonderful partner, Estuardo Rodriguez, President and CEO of Intersect Public Affairs. Estuardo is the President and CEO of Intersect Public Affairs, focused on government affairs. He specializes in direct lobbying on Capitol Hill, the White House, and federal agencies in the areas of financial services, technology, telecommunications, and media. He has been celebrated by The Hill and the National Institute of Lobbying and Ethics as a top lobbyist. Estuardo has cultivated a powerful network of business and civil rights leaders to help advance public policy that serves the public as well as the private sector. Throughout his diverse political career, Estuardo's commitment to advancing the interests of the Hispanic community has always been a constant. His work on two presidential campaigns contributed to elevating the importance of the Latino community as a political force and economic driver. Prior to that, he was an attorney at the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development under Secretaries Henry Cisneros and Andrew Cuomo. He has also worked on behalf of the U.S. Department of State as an independent political analyst in Latin America and Europe. Most recently, Estuardo was a co-founder of Raven, where he helped lead the government affairs and communications practice groups from a small team in Washington, D.C. to a national network across 5 states. Estuardo uses his influence and leadership on various nonprofit and industry boards. He currently serves as the president and CEO of Friends of the National Museum of the American Latino, a campaign to create a Smithsonian National Museum of the National American Latino on our national mall. Beginning in 2004, Estuardo launched an effort to gain congressional and White House authorization to build a Smithsonian museum that would exhibit more than 500 years of the contributions and sacrifices of Latinos in the United States. In December 2020, Congress finally granted the authorization, and now the focus is to ensure that the museum is built alongside our other iconic museums on our national mall. Estuardo is also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations and serves on the University of Virginia's Sorensen Institute for Political Leadership Advisory Board. Again, we are so delighted to be joined by Estuardo Rodriguez from Intersect Public Affairs. Estuardo, kicking it over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Kishan, for the invitation and the very kind remarks. Again, I am Mr. Rodriguez, President and CEO of Intersect Public Affairs. I've been invited here to give you just a broad lay of the land as the 119th Congress has begun. We have a strong majority Republican leadership in the Senate. We have a very slim margin in the House that I will talk with you about. And of course, we have a Republican White House under President Trump. As we talk through in preparation for our conversation here, as we've talked through the various issues that the organization has prioritized, we have centered in on clearly tax issues writ large. As you look at what Congress is prioritizing here, I think we've all heard exactly what the administration wants to take on, but we also have other issues that we'll talk about. But you can't get into any of these issues until you really understand, what the mechanisms are going to be to actually get any legislation done. So looking at the Senate, you've got 53 Republicans, 45 Democrats, 2 independents that caucus with Democrats in the Senate. So that takes you to 47-53. Again, as I mentioned a moment ago, Republicans in the Senate have a stronger majority there to move forward what needs to be accomplished on their agenda. Now, that said, you also have, and I am not saying this in a disparaging way at all, but you have some elderly senators there. So one of the things that our Republican and Democratic leaders are looking at is making sure that for the important votes, you've got everyone healthy and present to vote. So we have seen throughout history some of the senators actually come in straight from a medical appointment or a hospital bed. It's actually out there. Google it. You'll see a few examples of that. You need a healthy leadership, a healthy membership to come out and turn out the important votes that are needed. You can imagine how that was at the height of COVID and trying to get legislation done and move forward. In the House, though, you've got 219 Republicans, 215 Democrats, but you also have a changing leadership because of President Trump has decided to pull 2 additional members from the House to move over into his administration. In addition to that, you have one other member of the House, Mr. Matt Gaetz, who won his election but decided not to return. We won't get into any of that speculation, but that takes you to 219. That takes you 3 Republicans off the table there once the 2 other members of the House move into the administration. So the margin becomes 215 Democrats, 216 Republicans. You have a division within the Republicans, very much as you do with Democrats, but this is Republican leadership. So they're going to have to deal with their intra-party fighting. As we saw during the leadership election, not every Republican wanted Mike Johnson to come back as their leader in the House. He did come back through a lot of pushing, a lot of pressure from President Trump, but 216 or 215 means you're going to need every single Republican to support a specific legislation. Not to say we're going to count on a lot of fighting there among Republicans, as much as I'm saying Mike Johnson will need some Democrats to really buffer what legislation needs to get through. With that, as you can imagine, it means that you're going to have opportunities where Democrats, even though they're in the minority, are still going to have some muscle to pull and push forward issues that they deem priorities, as well as push back on things that they don't believe are actually going to help or serve Americans. So we'll go through all of that. Budget reconciliation is the first step for Republicans in moving forward any immediate changes that they want. Many of you may follow what budget reconciliation is, so please bear with me. You've got a very clear timeline here for Republicans to agree on the parameters for the budget reconciliation. In its simplest terms, they're looking at what the budget should be for Congress, and then carvings, taking a scalpel to any proposals, any legislation that has an impact on that. So the criteria or the framework for the budget reconciliation bill will be focused wholly on what number they want to get to, and everything else, if it's not germane, will be cut out and left out. So you're going to be seeing a number of proposals that are going to be jammed into the budget reconciliation, an effort to pull back on a lot of the things that President Biden moved forward. Think about, and we'll talk a little more about this, but think about the Inflation Reduction Act, the investments in our infrastructure, tax incentives in the renewable energy space, solar, wind, etc., EV tax rebates or tax incentives there. All of those issues are on the table. This administration is very committed to extending the tax cuts that they passed in 2017, and at the same time finding more money, which means they are going to do everything they can to claw back dollars that have not been spent yet. They're going to do everything they can to shut down programs that they don't feel serve the Trump administration agenda. You'll hear a lot about that. The issue that I think President Trump is going to face is that, as an example, when you look at renewable energy, the investments in wind and solar, a lot of this money has gone into strong red states, created jobs in those states. And so it may not be as easy as this administration believes it will be, because of how much investment and growth in these spaces that red states have seen. So prepare for prolonged fighting. I don't think it's going to be an easy path. I understand the agenda that he's laid out. Huge tax breaks for wealthy, for companies, clawing back dollars in areas that are focused on EV, renewable energy, climate issues. But again, at the end of the day, politics is local, and when you're talking about money going into the pockets, blue or red, companies or states, depending on how you look at it, those checks are cut. You don't want to have to explain to your constituents that have turned out to vote for you that you're going to take back the funding that has actually allowed them to create jobs in their district. So just wanted to flag at least one challenge that we're going to have as we look through how this administration is going to act. But that said, they are going to try to move very quickly on the budget reconciliation side of things. They're likely going to be moving forward by March for a vote in the House. The Senate has a different approach here. The Senate is actually looking at a longer approach should the House actually meet their goal and getting this done by March. The Senate is looking sometime later in 2025 to finalize a budget reconciliation bill. So I'll I'll stop there and focus a little bit more on the actual tax law that will be expiring by December 31st, or that has a very short timeline here. You've got individual tax rates that are going to be affected by the expiration of that 2017 tax law. You have standard deductions, the SALT and other deductions that have been they go across the board, whether that's mortgage interest rate deduction, charitable donation deductions. Something that I know is very important on the Prosperity Now front, child tax credits. The maximum credit will drop from from $2,000 to $1,000 per child. We have seen during the campaign trail, Vice President Vance made huge commitments, as did Vice President Harris. Vice President Vance made commitments around how much he would champion on the child tax credit front. We'll see if that actually comes to fruition here. There has been consistently bipartisan support for child tax credit, but it comes down to the math. As you look at what budgetary number they're trying to go for, this administration, as I mentioned, is clawing back money and increasing some of those tax deductions. So where does the money come from for child tax credit? A lot of speculation around whether or not President Trump is actually going to be able to pull that money from increased tariffs. Within his own party, there is a criticism that is not going to be possible. Tariffs are not going to bring back, make up for the money that is either being cut, eliminate money that's being clawed back, or some of the new programs like the child tax credit. So just flagging there that internal debate is going to continue. Where they ultimately get the dollars for some of these issues, I think it remains to be seen. A lot of debate internally about whether or not they're actually going to be able to get that done. So I think you've also heard more recently about Donald Trump's commitment to changing the tipped wages, allowing more of the service industry to retain their tips and not get taxed in the same way. There's a lot of, again, that's going to go into the bucket of whether or not that's an immediate or long-term effort. I think that the fact that he's also created a Department of Government Efficiency, no longer co-led by Elon Musk and Ramaswamy, but now it appears it's just being led by Elon Musk. That, as a reminder for folks, is not an official federal agency. It is an informal body or kitchen cabinet. I would simplify it in that way. That they have made a commitment, or Elon Musk has made some level of a commitment to cut $1 trillion, if not more. I know recently he's backed away from that, but that is something that really is going to run into conflict with what President Trump wants to get done. I know I'm going to run out of time, but wanted to at least highlight, as we talk about the effort to advocate on child tax credit, on baby bonds, on a number of other issues that Prosperity Now is prioritizing. It's important to identify who are the people to influence. Senator Lindsey Graham will be playing a very key role in the reconciliation process from South Carolina. Jody Arrington, Republican from Texas, will also be playing a significant role. Jeff Merkley, from the ranking member from Oregon, and Brendan Boyle, the ranking member in the House from Pennsylvania. These four individuals will take a very important role. And so as we talk about advocacy and we talk about influencing key officials, we can share some of this information with the team so that you have an idea of where the levers of power are. It's going to be very important that we understand what footprint Prosperity Now has in some of these key districts and states, so that we can reach out, advocate, weigh in, expand our team of influential local and state government leaders to ensure that there's a bipartisan effort to protect or at least advance some of the priorities that Prosperity Now has on child tax credit and baby bonds as two issues, but I know there are many more out there. I want to be very respectful of our time, Deshaun, so I will just wrap with this, and then I'm happy to take any questions or guidance of anything else I should spend some time on here. But the key officials from the administration, I want to end with that. You've got some confirmation hearings that have already started, but the ones that are coming up and are going to be very important for the shaping of the economic plan, budget reconciliation, tax programs, and tax breaks that the administration is going to be working on. You've got Treasury Secretary coming in, Scott Bessent, Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy, Kenneth Keyes, Billy Long as the IRS Commissioner, Kevin Hassett as the National Economic Council Director, and Stephen Moran, Council of Economic Advisors. He's the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. So a number of very important names to keep in mind as we look at educating the Hill, educating the administration on Prosperity Now's priorities. So I'll take a deep breath. Let me know, Kishan, anything else I should be covering. Thank you so much.
Yes, and thank you, Estuardo. As someone who feels like they've been trying to follow this as closely as possible, I definitely learned a lot from your presentation. I'm sure we're going to have a few questions come in through the questions box, whether we answer them right now or towards the end of the webinar. But I did want to ask a quick question because I know that a lot of us are practitioners, boots on the ground individuals that are serving the communities around us. And so for people who want to stay in the know, right? We may not be able to dive as deep as you do, but what are some 3 tips that you could offer for practitioners or community engagement specialists, right?
Yeah.
Around staying in the know and making sure that they remain informed as we continue to anticipate these shifts.
Well, we live in an age of just overflow of information. It is nonstop. You just have to find the right places to look for them. I would strongly recommend, and these are free resources. You have Politico has a section where you can elect you can subscribe to specific tip sheets. These morning tip sheets, Politico Money is a great one. Goes out by 8 a.m. There are other tip sheets you have to pay for, but Political Money by 8 a.m. I think is fine if you're really just trying to stay on top of things and look and keep an eye on those levers of power that you need to influence. So I would subscribe to that. There are others out there. Axios is another one, and Punchbowl. Punchbowl does have a separate tip sheet also on finance, banking, taxes. So it's just about navigating through their platforms to subscribe to the right tip sheets. I think the other thing that's going to be important as you reach out on the ground, if you do, foresee staying and looking at those levers of power to influence, especially in the House or the Senate, I would simply reach out to those staffers. They have offices in the in your area, right? Normally by some of the major these city hubs, but they have offices there. They take the constituent requests, requests for information, requests for the senator, requests for the member of the House, and they will keep you posted if there's specifically an issue that you need to follow. I would at least start looking at building a relationship with those staffers in the district because it's their job. It's their job to keep making sure that constituents know what's going on so that you can be more informed and be helpful to the senator in the House. Let me just put it this way, because it really does open up a very important point for me in the work that I do with Capitol Hill. I am trying to be a resource for staffers. Staffers on the Hill and in the districts or in the states are juggling a myriad of issues every day. And if you are able to, as a Prosperity Now team member, tell them exactly what's happening on the ground, provide data and research, then you're helping them do their job better. So don't reach out to a staffer with this approach that is more about helping you, you're actually helping them. And that dynamic in that relationship is so important for people in the community to understand. When you reach out, you're doing their boss a favor by helping them make smarter and better decisions. So definitely set up a relationship and build a relationship with your elected officials and their staff. They will appreciate you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate that. We're going to head into our panel discussion soon. But Estuardo, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
especially that last note about like shifting the paradigm around interactions with staffers. I don't think that's spoken to enough. And so I hope you stay on because we do have a few more questions that we probably want to get to for our second Q&A segment. And so we'll bring you back. And this is not the last time that you all will hear and see Estuardo as well. So I'm going to kick things off to Keyshawn for our expert panel, and then we'll all come back together and do a Q&A.
Thank you so much, Olivia, and thank you, Estuardo, for providing us with those three free resources and a comprehensive overview of how our organizations and partners should tackle these critical issues. And so now we want to bring in some of our friends that are in the field doing the work every day. First, we want to introduce Mr. Dave Szyminski. Dave retired in 2023, but was for 10 years prior to retirement a senior policy analyst in the Office of Community Affairs at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Dave was the senior advisor for the CFPB Emergency Savings Initiative and led staff for the Bureau's asset building programs, including the Tax Time Savings and Children's Savings Account initiatives. Prior to joining the CFPB, Dave spent 15 years working in the asset building field in Seattle, Washington, and he helped start and managed a countywide individual development account program, a large-scale free tax preparation and EITC campaign, and a nonprofit affiliated with a low-income community development credit union. David has over 30 years of experience in program management in both the private and nonprofit sectors, and he has a bachelor's degree in economics from Western Washington University and a master's degree in public administration from Daniel J. Evans School of Public Affairs at the University of Washington. Thank you for joining us, Dave. We're also delighted to be joined by Chuck Marr. Chuck is the Vice President for Federal Tax Policy at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. From 1999 through 2004, he was Economic Policy Advisor to Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle and Senior Advisor Senior Advisor for Budget Policy at the National Economic Council from 1997 through 1999 during the second term of President Clinton. Tax policy was a key area of responsibility in both of those positions. In addition, earlier in his career, he worked with the staffs of the Senate Budget and Banking Committees. And prior to joining the Center in March of 2009, he was a senior political strategist in the Washington Research Group of Lehman Brothers and Barclays Capital, where he analyzed the impact of public policy on financial markets. He is also taught as an adjunct professor at Georgetown University. Chuck has his BA in economics from the University of Rochester and an MBA in finance from the Columbia Business School. And last but certainly not least, we're joined by Ray Bashara. He is the senior policy advisor for the Center for Social Development at Washington University in St. Louis from 2022 in November 22 until June 2004. Ray was a legislative fellow in the office of United States Senator Bob Casey, where he focused particularly on Senator Casey's 401 kids proposal. Prior to this, he served over 11 years at the Federal Reserve Bank in St. Louis, where he was the founding director of a research center focused on wealth inequality. Before moving to St. Louis in 2009, Ray was vice president of New America, a DC-based think tank. And prior to New America, he worked in Congress, Prosperity Now, the United Nations in Rome, and Ernst and Winnie, now EY. Ray's been all over, and thank you so much. And in 2001, Ray published The Future of Building Wealth in partnership with the Aspen Institute. Ray was raised in Akron, Ohio. He's a first generation graduate of The Ohio State University, and he holds master's degrees from Yale Divinity School and the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining our conversation again today. Let's jump right in with our first question. And please feel free to come off mute at any point. First, turn it over to you, Dave. With our shifting political priorities, how can network members and community organizations best position themselves to influence the implementation of baby bonds and CSA programs at the state and federal levels?
Well, thanks, Kishan. And I think Ray's going to have more to say about this, but my initial observations is it's sometimes a difficult case to make because policymakers sometimes look at baby bonds or child savings accounts as another sort of direct government subsidy to families, especially when you design them with progressive elements like greater subsidies for people with low incomes. But I would continue to make the case that the long-term return on investment from policies like baby bonds far outweighs the short-term costs. So if the goal is to increase productivity of the workforce, if the goal is to reduce reliance on public benefit programs and increase financial stability, then with families, then baby bonds have the potential to achieve all those goals and more.
Thank you so much, Dave. Ray, any input?
Yes, thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to be here. I appreciate it. And yes, Dave is absolutely right. It's important to emphasize the long-term benefits, and I'd say especially with Republicans, the long-term benefits of having wealth, which many Republicans see as critical to economic self-sufficiency and sort of participating in what many of them call the upside of America. So this idea of wealth, over many years, I've worked with many Republicans and Democrats, but Republicans in particular love the economic self-sufficiency that goes along with having wealth. So I think that's really important. I would also say, though, just very briefly, I think certainly in the field over many years, the distinction between baby bonds and child savings accounts has mattered for program design purposes. Let me just say, though, that I think at the federal level, that distinction doesn't really matter because we're going to have one shot if we work hard at federal policy. And I think it's really critical that folks who've been working on both strategies, which are really remarkable and successive, they need to come together and fight for one policy that's going to allow both strategies to thrive.
Thank you for that, Ray. And Chuck, what potential opportunities or challenges do you find that we could potentially align in the federal tax policies with the goal of fostering equitable economic outcomes?
Thanks, Kishan. Yeah, I think challenges. Well, I think the challenges on the tax bill sadly extend beyond the tax bill, beyond the tax code. I think so. I think the top priority of this tax bill is to avoid really doing harm to low-income people and families. And I think there's huge threats here with Republicans going after people's health care and after their food, their lunches, their dinners, right? So going after SNAP. So I think the first thing you're trying to do in this bill is to make that very hard to do. As was said before, the margins in the House and Senate are very, very tight. We have to make that very hard. So the first priority is really to do no harm, to not let them pass a bill that really hurts people, makes it harder to go to the doctor, makes it harder to eat. So I think that's number one. I
Mhm.
think second, you're trying to win a public debate, so you win for sort of uh, making clear that this is a tax bill heavily tilted in favor of very rich people, and so you can come back after it's like trying to limit the size of it, but then come back and be able to change it. But I think you're also you're looking for opportunities, right? It was mentioned before. Mr. Wardo mentioned that the child tax credit is one that there is, the bipartisan agreement in the past. Republicans did nothing on it in the original tax bill, and it's up for extension. Million kids, right? Basically half the black kids in the country who don't get the full child tax credit. So it still has a flawed design, needs to be improved. But Republicans have shown some willingness to do that. So that's what we're really trying to do is trying to put pressure, public pressure, really on the ground and folks on the call, reaching out to your members of Congress, senators, putting pressure really to get them to put some focus on there and make some improvement at the end where, for the folks who are the home health aides in the country, the waitresses, right, the people who do the work,
Mhm.
to get them something more.
Thank you, Chuck, and each of you. One thing in particular that stood out to me was how we should reframe the narrative when we're speaking with Republican elected officials. How we should um, talk about, economic self-sufficiency. And so, what advice do you have for financial practitioners and how they can work with this current administration if they have worked in the past on financial inclusion or racial equity work or economic justice? And anyone can, can take a stab at that one.
Well, I think, as Florida said before, I would just add back to the child tax credit that Vice President Vance really has staked out a claim on that. He's shown
Mm,
interest in that. He's been in favor of it. You have a bunch of Republicans right now, Senator Hawley in the Senate, a bunch of them are talking about it. And the folks we're talking about, whether they're in or out, are people who get up and they do the hard work, right? Again, they're the people who make the food, pick the food, right? Care for elderly people, care for kids, and work hard and just trying to do their best. So I think that's a way to get to them and just that and highlight again what their history has been here. They've done some good things. They need to do it.
I would add that I agree with everything Chuck said. I think there is a populist wing of the party that includes JD Vance. I'd say it even includes Jason Smith, the chair of the Ways and Means Committee, that have been on record in support of things like child tax credits. So I think we need to strengthen that. And I would further add that I think Kevin Hassett could be a bigger ally than a lot of us realize. He's on record of supporting retirement savings accounts for all members of the population, not just the upper half who have access to retirement accounts. In a public forum
mm.
in October, he spoke very favorably of investment accounts at birth, government funded for all kids. So I think we have some strains to work with here that are encouraging for doing something in particular for disadvantaged kids, whether it's on the income side or the wealth side.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that we have a 1 year experiment around the child tax credit enhancement, because as folks will remember from the American Recovery Plan Act, the child tax credit for 1 year, 2021, I believe, was increased to $3,600 per child. It was made fully refundable, and also the payments were made on a monthly basis for many people. And so that actually better matched the cash flow needs of a lot of consumers with low incomes and low wealth. So you could point to that, and there is some research, although we only have 1 year to measure it with, but that during that 1 year, there's some research that shows that the child poverty rate was reduced by about half. So it's something to point to when you're making the case for child tax credit going forward.
And there's a strong evidence base for whether you call them baby bonds, CSAs, 401 kids. There's experimental evidence from the state of Oklahoma that's very compelling, and shows wealth accumulation despite a great recession and changes in attitudes for mothers and kids. I mean, I think the evidence base is not the issue here. It's building the relationships with folks in the community, with the staffers, especially in states that are critical to this debate. We have great evidence. We have to frame it and leverage it.
Thank you for that. And that child tax credit was a critical one, as it did work to decrease childhood poverty by 50%. And so each of your backgrounds, you all have touched on uh, being in government service to an extent. And so throughout your time, what lessons have you learned from past administration transitions that can help our network members navigate the potential shifts in funding and support for tax credit programs, savings programs, and family centered policies?
Well, this is a personal experience, but it might be reflective of what transitions mean. So, as folks know, I worked at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and I came there in 2013 under the Obama administration with Rich Cordray as the director. And then Rich left in 2017, and that was after Trump was put in office. And our new director was Kathy Kraniger. Now, Kathy had an entirely different view of the role of the bureau, where she was less interested in in regulatory and enforcement actions, but more interested in financial empowerment strategies. So under Kathy, we were able to start things like our emergency savings initiative called Start Small, Save Up. We were encouraged to partner with other federal agencies and other private actors and nonprofit actors. We even used our Office of Innovation to provide safe harbor for employers to set up accounts in advance, emergency savings accounts for employees, obviously with their consent, and to auto deposit out of their paycheck into an emergency savings account. Unfortunately, we only had a brief period of time to do that, so we got it up and running, and then the transition occurred again to the Biden administration and our new director, Rohit Chopra, who was far less interested in financial empowerment strategies and much more interested in getting back to enforcement and regulation. So going through two transitions and understanding what leadership really wants to do, and it can influence how you work in that space.
Yes, thank you, Dave. And go ahead,
I,
Chuck.
from my perspective, I would say first is that it's a long game, right? It's a long game, and that wins can compound and grow. So even if you just can get something that's relatively small, these small things add up over time. If you look at the history of the child tax credit, the EITC, over decades, they grow and grow and grow. I think that's first. You're in it for the long term. And second, a little contrary to that, is that what you don't want to take is a structural defeat, right? You can take a little step back, but you don't want to take a defeat like a Medicaid, like having a program restructured so all of a sudden it's a block grant. That's the thing, that kind of defeat, you really want to do all you can to avoid a big setback like that.
Thank you, and welcome back, Eduardo. And attendees, please feel free to continue to send those questions along to us as we get close to the end. Question for you, Eduardo. Can you speak to Invest America accounts and other federal legislation around CSA and baby bond like policies? I'll kick that to Eduardo, Ray, and Dave.
Yeah, I can speak to it with a lot of detail. We have a brand new Congress. Everything that was proposed in the last Congress needs to be reintroduced. Whether or not you actually see some momentum, I did have a conversation with Senator Booker's office towards the end of the last Congress, where he is still committed to carrying the baby bonds issue. The hope is that he will be able to identify a Republican counter to introduce that legislation. But in the time that we spent with Senator Booker, there was a real push to ensure that the states keep driving these issues. As we have seen with minimum wage, we've seen with so many issues, if the states drive these issues successfully, then the federal government ends up in a situation where they have to catch up. They feel they have cover, they feel they have support to move it forward. So I would not hone in solely on the Fed as much as seeing what additional resources and educational outreach can be done at the state level to strengthen the argument at the federal level.
Yeah, thank you, Eduardo. I fully agree with that. I've also been in touch with Senator Booker. It was a huge loss when Senator Casey lost, senior member of the Finance Committee. He had his 401 kids bill. Obviously, the lead Democrat now will be Senator Booker. He's very committed to this issue. He does, in fact, need to find a Republican to move this issue forward. Invest America is a newer group, been around about a year, Republican leaning, supported by some very wealthy tech entrepreneurs, and have built an impressive coalition of employers that want to contribute to these accounts once set up. And these accounts would be $1,000 at birth for all kids, automatic. So, it's great to have a Republican leaning group saying that that's a good idea, including Kevin Hassett. But nonetheless, the challenge is still to find a Republican who's going to take on that idea and partner with Senator Booker. I'd say that Ron Wyden is an ally. He's a big fan of at least the 401 kids architecture. So I think there's opportunity here, but just to build on an earlier point, we might have to start small and build something over time and take a long view. So a lot of the focus for folks like me is, what does that down payment on this bigger idea look like, and how can we build it over time?
Thank you, Ray. question in the chat. I'll see if I can frame it correctly. We have a $2 trillion annual deficit, a 36 plus trillion dollar in national debt. Should we start with initiatives that encourage legacy wealth transfers to children that are budget neutral and do not add to the deficits or the national debt? It's a tough one. It's a tax heavy one.
Well, I'll give everybody a time to think about that. I'll buy time here, but I think it goes back to the presentation that I led here. When you look at the dynamic of what this administration wants to get done in terms of cutting trillions, if you believe Elon Musk, cutting trillions from the federal budget, the money's got to come from somewhere, right? The effort right now to extend tax cuts, to fund various programs right now. If you talk about immigration and the border, that money's has to come from somewhere. Republicans within the Trump administration's own party has said the amount of money that's going to be needed to actually succeed in the goals of deportation numbers is not within the current ICE budget. You're going to have to deputize folks at the law enforcement at the local level, and they're going to need a lot of money. So I'm going the long way to say the money's going to come from somewhere, and the money isn't anywhere at this point. So as you talk about some of the goals that that would be ideal, it's just gonna be very hard to get the math done.
Awesome. Well, I have one final question for you all to participate in. Uh, for you, as we look towards the next cycle in political leadership, what's at top of mind for you in terms of taxes and baby bonds and in this space?
Well, I just say, I mean, I don't want to repeat what everybody else has said, but I mean, I think you have to, take the long view, understand this is an entirely different political environment, and so you have to be able to navigate it in a way to look for places where you can gain leverage from both sides of the aisle. For Ray's point about finding sponsors for, baby bonds and things like that, and also what Chuck said, and then really just look for opportunities. And then I guess the last thing I would say, is really think about what happens 2 years from now in 2026, when there's new elections for the House and some members of the Senate.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say first is protect people's basic needs, right? You don't want people to lose health insurance. You don't want to lose their food. That's first. Second, and then you're looking to sort of contain the cost of this thing. The government revenues are very, very low. We can't afford to lose more of it. And then look for opportunities to make some progress, right? There are some Republicans who care about certain things, like for a certain degree for low income kids, try to push them and shame them into doing something.
I would just add that 401 kids and baby bonds have a long history of bipartisan support. I think Invest America is trying to revive that tradition of bipartisan support. Obviously, we need to think about the framing that would resonate more with Republicans, as we've talked about. Again, wealth and opportunity and being a part of the upside of America are things that work well. So our goal here is simply to be a part of the conversation, have a foothold in the conversation about the tax bill, and then try to build something that could be a modest but down payment on this idea, something that we can build on over many years.
Thank you, Ray. Awesome. Do you have anything else, Jordan? Or you're good to go?
Yes, I would actually I would add to this conversation that there is no perfect time for some of this legislation. As someone who has been advocating for certain efforts for 20 years of my life, and have some of these bills pass, 10 years down the road and then still not be perfect, so we still have to work on something else. I mean, you have to constantly be pushing this forward, because you just simply do not know when the opportunity will actually open up to get some of this stuff done. So as you look at the Trump administration, Republican leadership in the House and the Senate, do not assume anything that you cannot get progress, as was briefly mentioned. There are some of these issues are very bipartisan, and it may just be the right time. So don't be dissuaded. Keep pushing forward. You just don't ever really understand where the opportunity might lie. So thank you.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Some key takeaways that I have from this conversation are one, to utilize the free resources of Political Money, Punchbowl, Axios, for our practitioners to consider a state approach. If you aren't making any movement at the federal level, then reach out to your state legislators. The goal is to look at how you frame your conversations in terms of increasing wealth or increasing productivity. We refuse to accept structural defeat. And so we thank each of our practitioners and folks on the ground and in the field for the work that you do to advance CSAs, baby bonds, and tax initiatives. And then finally, that it's a long game and that we can have our small wins compound to larger growth. And so thank each and every one of you for joining us and sharing your tidbits with our community. And now I'll kick it back over to you, Olivia.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll be completely honest. For about 5 minutes, I forgot I was at work. I felt like I was watching MSNBC. It was the perfect blend of like knowledge and application. And I hope that everyone really did enjoy today's conversation. This is the first of two conversations. And so, like I said, you'll hear from Estuardo again. And then we also have an upcoming webinar on February 5th, where we'll be discussing housing and entrepreneurship. And so if those are more so your jam, please feel free to register. I just dropped that in the chat for everyone. But yeah, thank you again so much for this. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think at times of transition, you always have a few questions around how you're going to facilitate and create spaces like these. But I think we had the perfect blend of expertise and compassion and just optimism, right, for the future and for the next 4 years and beyond. And so what's next is we'll keep in touch. We hope you keep in touch, and we'll be sure to do the same. We want you to complete the follow-up survey. Like I said, this is one of two conversations that we'll have around various topics. And so we'll use that information to guide us in upcoming conversations. And also, we just say that we really, really appreciate you all. We're so happy to have this community and have these wonderful partners connected to Prosperity Now as we continue to fight the great fight and do the work that we do. But again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of our wonderful panelists and speakers. And we know this won't be the last time. We look forward to collaborating with you all soon, and we hope to continue conversations like these. But have a wonderful day, and thank you all.